It's Sunday, January 26, 2025. I'm Anthony Davis. Welcome to the Weekend Show, where we make the time to consider the news of the week. You can support my work and independent journalism at patreon.com/5minute news. Our guest today is a national trial lawyer, strategist, and host of Legal AF on the Midas Touch Network, Michael Popok. Welcome back to the Weekend Show.
Thank you. It's been a while. I was just thinking, I was going through, racking my brain because I love doing the show. And now is the perfect time. I'm so glad you asked me now. I mean, Coming off of the election, coming off of the Trump, it's hard to believe. I'm already exhausted, and it's only 4 days into his administration, or 5 days into his administration. So I was so thrilled when you asked me to join, because I think now is the time for you and I to put our heads back together again and talk to our collective overlapping audience about what is going on, including in the world that I'm comfortable in, which is the federal court system and its ability to continue to protect democracy and be a co-equal branch of government.
Well, that's the thing, and I am not a lawyer, you are, and I don't pretend to know the law, so I rely on your expertise, and I'm very grateful for that. So if we look at Trump's first day back in the White House, he cranked out 26 executive orders, 12 memoranda, 4 proclamations just on his first day. I am very much of the opinion that the authoritarian does this to put the fear of God into people, to actually give the impression that he is all-powerful, and that whether or not, because he didn't seem to know what many of these executive orders were, he was literally being handed them. And it reminded me of that scene in Blazing Saddles where the governor is being asked to sign things and in return for a box of ping-pongs by Hedy Lamarr. The performance, the performative aspect of this is a big part of what Trump does. But behind him, there are quite a few legal minds, Stephen Miller we know, who's running policy and possibly the country, that are actually giving him some of this dark material to work with.
Yeah. So my interpretation of that shock and awe from the first day, which I'm already over it, is that most of the executive orders that he signed, however you characterize it, are unconstitutional or illegal and will be found so. We're going to talk about 7 lawsuits already filed, 1 in temporary injunction already issued against his birthright citizenship one. Most of it was to pander to some MAGA base or MAGA sub-base,
yes,
having made promises to them, knowing full well that, to paraphrase Judge Coffenor in Seattle, it's just blatantly unconstitutional on their face. What I take as what I'm encouraged by is that it reinforces that this Trump administration is going to operate through executive orders almost solely. He has made the calculus, Trump has, that he cannot get legislation through the slim margin in the MAGA 119th House. And so he's going to have to do it by executive order, which plays into the hands of fair-minded people, moderates, Democrats, Republicans, people who believe in the rule of law, because he colors outside of the lines every time he does an executive order. And whenever, just for our audience, your audience, the executive order is a statement of the law by the executive branch. It doesn't make new law. It is supposed to be implementing law that already exists by Congress and has to also have the added benefit of being constitutional. And so you can electrify it, you can electrocute it between those two poles. If it's inconsistent with administrative law or Congress's law, or it's a major decision that the Supreme Court has said, executive orders can't make this law. That is only for Congress to make. Or it's unconstitutional because it violates an amendment like the 14th Amendment, Section 1 on birthright citizenship. That means every time you heard 20 executive orders, I heard 150 lawsuits.
Right. Yes.
And we've already seen.
But that's good to know, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because most people are not educated in the law. It seems that 90 million people chose to sit out this election, so are disengaged even from politics, too busy getting on with their lives and don't think that these things will affect them. But the stuff that he's doing, it's not just about birthright citizenship, which will affect a small percentage of the US population. It's also things like wanting to shut down the National Institutes of Health, stop them from reporting on serious health issues. I mean, God forbid there'd be another pandemic or something as serious as that. Under Donald Trump, a lot more people potentially could die just through lack of information.
Yeah, I mean, I think I take a lot of solace and comfort in the fact that he's going to have to operate through executive orders, because that's in my wheelhouse. That means we're going to end up in courts with federal judges. And to give more comfort to our audience here, we watched what Donald Trump and MAGA did during Biden's administration. We know the Texas two-step. We know you go to a Texas judge and then you go to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals on the way to the Supreme Court. But we have our own versions of that. And let's just use the birthright citizenship as an example.
Sure.
And I heard you say that it doesn't affect a lot of people, but it does. For me, as an American, I know this is your adopted country. It goes to the very heart and soul of who we are as an American people.
Yeah. Well, I do. I have one of my children is born in the U.S., so I'm totally into.
Well, subject to the executive order. now we'll have to check your documented status on that day, but for another time.
Yeah.
So let's just use it because it's right here in front of us. And it's exactly what I hoped would happen. It's the coalition of attorneys general in the 18 to 20 states that are controlled by Democrats, California, Oregon, Washington, New York, places like that. It is the public interest groups like the ACLU and the NAACP, joined with new public interest groups that have been created just since the election, since the election. Like Norm Eisen has a new Defending Democracy, Democracy Forward. They all have these democracy names, but they're all joined together. And whether they're coordinating directly or out of respect for each other, they're using a portfolio method where they're filing multiple cases in front of multiple favorable courts just in case they get a bad decision. And so they can pick and choose and for a little bit of forum shopping about which appellate courts they want to end up in for the fast track to the United States Supreme Court. So let me use birthright citizenship as a good example. 2 days apart, we have the filing by 22 states, 18 and 2 cities file in one place, and 4 file in Seattle Federal Court in Washington. That's the case where we got the actual temporary restraining order. The other 18 filed in Massachusetts. 2 days before that, the public interest groups, those were led by the attorneys general. The public interest groups, the NAACP and the ACLU chapters, representing the Indonesian community that had just landed in New Hampshire. Talk about Plymouth Rock. Just landed in New Hampshire in 2023, and we're having children. Filed in New Hampshire. Now, what does New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Washington have in common? Not much, except they're all liberal or moderate venues for the trial court level, and they report into liberal or moderate appellate courts, which is what really matters. The First Circuit for New Hampshire and Massachusetts, the Ninth Circuit, which covers California as well, for Washington. That's where we want to be. That's where moderates and fair-minded people want to be. And just to remind people, just put this in context, not the judge, but the court that just issued the temporary restraining order for the next 14 days until a full briefing on preliminary injunction to stop the enforcement of the birthright citizenship executive order, which is an order that all federal agencies will look mothers and children in the eye and tell them that they are not recognized as that the children and the babies are not recognized as U.S. citizens because of an executive order overcoming the 14th Amendment, Section 1, which is a constitutional guarantee. If you're born on this soil, unless you're born to a diplomat, you're an American citizen, not a gift, as Donald Trump likes to talk about it, something you can return, something you need a receipt for. Okay, the only receipt you need is a birth certificate. Huh?
Yeah, not an anchor baby.
Not an anchor baby.
Yeah.
A constitutionally protected right since the 1860s, reinforced in the 1898s by Supreme Court precedent on this very point. And so when you had Judge Coffenor in that Seattle courthouse, I want to remind people that back in the first Trump administration, the first temporary restraining order against Donald Trump was out of that same courthouse against his Muslim travel ban, against that executive order.
Right.
So that's why they pick. We know what we're doing too, by the way, and we know what courts to go to. Now, all of those courts the Ninth and the First Appellate Court report into Supreme Court justices. Each one sits over a different one of our districts, circuit courts of appeal, which are also the Democratic wing of the Supreme Court. So we're lining this up. We already got the first TRO. That does not mean that the other two cases stop. Those judges have their cases in front of them. And we may get 3-0, cherry, 3 blocks, right? Even though one has already happened, or one might put theirself on hiatus waiting to see what happens in that case. And then we, as strategists and technicians working on the case, those lawyers can decide which is their best path into the United States Supreme Court. That birthright citizenship is going to be before the Supreme Court within the next 60 days.
It's reassuring, firstly, I would say, to hear you talk about this coalition of kind of litigation. That is reassuring. But let's back up a bit, because the bit that shocks me, and you and I have discussed this before, is that we're talking about a political court system, a political judiciary, which, from where I'm from, we don't have.
When you define that for me in the audience, what's a political judicial system?
Judges appointed by politicians based on their politics.
I see.
So if we start at the Supreme Court, we know that we're stacked with some very extreme views. Donald Trump got his strategically 3 in, even down to the last few days of his first presidency, right? So, crowbarring in Amy Coney Barrett at the 11th hour. And we know that, as much as people like to say, oh, well, they're going to do the right thing, as I see it, they never really do. They do what Donald Trump wants. They do what the Federalist Society wants, or the Heritage Foundation, or any of these organizations where there is lobby and pressure. And so they know what their role is. And I do think they also feel that they owe Donald Trump a debt of gratitude. He's given them a lifetime appointment. And so there is leverage there. And he will, of course, use it, because that's who he is. So with that at the very top, and then we've seen with Judge Eileen Cannon in Florida, of course, with the stolen documents, the espionage case, we've seen the way that she has manipulated that case because she is in the tank for Donald Trump.
And let's do a global AF breakout session. So the High Court in the UK, where do those people come from?
The High Court is also known as the Supreme Court. So they're much of the same thing. They are appointed by, as far as I know, I think they're appointed by prime ministers in a non-political fashion. And so there isn't a feeling in the UK at all that a judge is going to make a decision based on who appointed them. It is the separation of the judiciary and politics is so great because they're working for the crown effectively. And the crown.
Well, you're going to hate state court proceeding because in state courts, most states, you elect your judges, including at the Supreme Court level.
Right. And they have to fundraise to get elected. Right. So ka-ching. Yeah. So it is such a different system to the system that I know from the UK and that most Europeans know from Europe. Of course, there's corruption, and we've seen that with, in Italy and various places where there is corruption in the courts. But
I have to tell you,
in the main, there is a separation.
As a practicing lawyer for 35 years, I did not have this issue that you're talking about. We didn't have this issue before MAGA, before Trump. I did not look up who appointed which federal judge. Oh, Obama. Oh, that was Bush. Oh, that was Reagan. I mean, I might have been interested, but it did not affect my advocacy. I didn't think I was getting a crappy decision. These judges not because of who put them in office. I'll just stay in federal court for a minute, would have their own reputations. Oh, he sides with the prosecution. Oh, she sides with the defense. Oh, they hate money laundering cases. Oh, they hate drug cases. I mean, that would be a different, but that wasn't being sliced along the bias of their politics. Now, and we do it all the time on Legal AF. You mentioned Legal AF before? I did. It's like, where did the judge come from? Oh, that's a Trumper. Now, usually that is now shorthand for somebody who's going to side with Donald Trump on major cases because they are beholden to him. On rare occasions, I do report that people that got appointed by Trump, like Carl Nichols in D.C., who I know from friends, where he came from, more of a country club Republican than a MAGA Republican. He didn't get not in every case are people getting it because they're Federalist Society and MAGA.
Yeah,
but that is the litmus test that he uses. Now at the Supreme Court
But this is a
level,
decade now, isn't it?
It's a decade now.
It's a decade of Trumpism
Yes.
that has changed the judiciary unrecognizably.
Well, let me prove your point. The Supreme Court of the United States, my entire adult life, since law school, it has been dominated by Republicans. Always. Every Chief Justice except for one, since I've been a thinking human being, has been a Republican. That's not been the problem. The problem's not been the Republican versus Democratic mix on the Supreme Court. The problem is we just saw a calculated artificial selection process led by Leonard Leo and the Heritage Foundation and the Federalist Society to handpick judges in order to accomplish their agenda of taking away a woman's right to choose, destroying the administrative state, and destroying environmental protection, and enshrining individual personal gun rights. Which is check, yeah. and to create a unitary executive branch, a all-powerful, all-knowing president, a Leviathan, is all part of the playbook. And they needed 3 judges to do that, to get the numbers, and that was Amy Coney Barrett, Brett Kavanaugh, and Neil Gorsuch. If you don't believe me, go look up the fundraising and the campaign that went around them when they were up for confirmation, and who was funding it. Big tobacco, big guns and ammunition, and pro life.
And cover-ups as well. I mean, there was a cover-up of the Brett Kavanaugh hearing, undoubtedly, and Amy Coney Barrett, completely unqualified for the role of a Supreme Court judge. So, and Neil Gorsuch, I mean, clearly he's available for hire. I mean, to me, that's the kind of guy
he's in the back pocket of the NRA, as
right.
is the other ones. And the sad part about the Amy Coney Barrett observation, which I don't disagree with, is that she is going to be the swing vote on that. We are watching the rise of the Amy Coney Barrett court. I don't say that because she's covering herself with any glory or I side with her. I don't. There's only a couple of times where she's stepped out, although she's doing it more and more recently. But she is the right center, the center right vote now on that court. And she's going to be, I predict, we'll come back and talk about it towards the end of the term and future terms, she will end up in that majority. If there's a majority to be had, she's going to be in the majority more than any other Supreme Court justice.
The problem we also have now is not just the way the court is stacked, but it's the fact that the court has also granted this authoritarian president a broad immunity. That is unprecedented. Again, it didn't happen by accident, did it? Tell us kind of how it came about and why it came about when it did, because it wasn't just about getting Trump off the hook for some of these charges. I mean, this is more about what's coming next.
Yeah. I mean, I've talked to people that are in the know, like Judge Ludick, who's been on our show before, who's friends with John Roberts, who's, the new Solicitor General incoming, John Sauer clerked for him. I mean, he's the guy. And he said, there was only one, he said it on my show, there's only one person that was purposefully benefited by the immunity decision in July, and that was for Donald Trump to get elected. And what happened in the terms of the completely destroying the delicate co-equal branches of government and checks and balance system by our framers, be damned. And so that is part of the terrible legacy of John Roberts, who I have said will go down in history. He's circling the drain of history. He will go down in history as one of the worst Chief Justices we've ever had. Not only because the Dobbs decision, ripping away a woman's constitutional right to choose, was on his watch, but also because he wrote all of the major decisions that benefited Donald Trump. So he has nobody to blame but himself. So just before the immunity decision, just as a setup, he pens the Colorado 14th Amendment Section 3 case about insurrectionists not being allowed on state ballots for federal office. So he gives him the win there, keeps him on now that one, to be frank, was 9-0. So that it was, for the Supreme Court, it was not that controversial. For everybody else. Just
explain that 9-0, because a lot of Democrats were pretty furious about that decision.
No, we're upset about it, but the Supreme Court was unified that states have a role in federal elections, but they can't keep federal presidential candidates or officers off a ballot. That's not a state function. That is a federal function. So, and then they turned it over to Congress under Section 5 and said, really, what you're going to need to do, even though this is nowhere written in the 14th Amendment, is have Congress do something affirmatively in order to ban him. That's a Congress thing, not a state house thing. And that was every one of the Supreme Court. I mean, Kagan was as vocal as anybody during the oral argument. Like, how can we let Illinois or Tennessee decide who's going to be the president because they're going to ban it? I mean, you'd have to miss the oral argument and miss the reading if you think that 14.3 helped you to ban Donald Trump at the last moment for the presidency, because it did not. So he pens that, Roberts. Fast forward a couple of months later, and when we get the decision in July, which is Trump versus the United States on immunity. Now, all they had to do was to back a very well-reasoned opinion by Judge Pan, three-judge panel, 3-0 at the D.C. Court of Appeals,
which was very well written.
Very well written,
right?
I think if we get the House back again, I see Pan being a short list for the Supreme Court. I thought she's a young judge, but she did a masterful job. But for the Supreme Court, they went into this whole, well, you got to divide the world into three buckets. If it's a core constitutional function of the presidency listed in the Constitution, like making treaties and giving out pardons and other things related to that, then, inferior officers, that kind of thing, then absolute immunity, we're done. Then they said, we'll look at official conduct, which is sort of like the job description for the president, and we'll stretch it to its outer boundaries because that's what they want to do. And if it falls within those stretched to its outer boundaries, then there is a rebuttable presumption, but it's a hard presumption to rebut, that is immune. It can be rebutted by the Department of Justice. That's what we watched with that big filing by Jack Smith, 150 pages plus an appendix, in order to prove that this was outside that scope of work. And then the last one is just good old-fashioned private prosecutable conduct. Like, Donald Trump raped somebody, if he raped somebody in the White House. That doesn't really fall into the first two buckets. And so that would be prosecutable. The way he framed that, and the conversation during oral argument about, well, let me get this straight. Are you saying that Donald Trump or somebody in his position could order SEAL Team 6 to assassinate and take out a political rival, and that would be okay because he's the commander in chief? You would have thought that would be like, no, I'm not saying that. That went on for half an hour about whether he'd be empowered to do that.
I know. I listened to that, and I thought I was going crazy while I was listening to that. I literally thought I was going mad hearing that being argued. So we're in a situation, we have to just to kind of lay out the matrix of this insanity. So Donald Trump has protection from above because so many of these cases will end up in the Supreme Court. At least he hopes they will, because he knows that he has protection in the Supreme Court. Does that ring true with you?
Not for every case, though. They're starting now. I think you're starting to see a little bit of Supreme Court remorse. I've heard through the rumor mill that John Roberts has been was shocked that people took him to task for the immunity decision, and that it destroyed. We believe it destroyed the co-equal branches of government and the delicate checks and balances.
He wrote that opinion piece, didn't he? That basically said,
right, shocked.
Please, you've got to trust us. We know what we're doing.
Yeah.
Just don't criticize the Supreme Court. We're on the right side of history.
So we're starting to see a little bit of a rollback, a little bit of a walk back now by the Supreme Court. Roberts joins Amy Coney Barrett to find that Donald Trump can be sentenced for the felonies in New York. They don't step in the way of that. They had an opportunity to step in and give him immunity from the E. Jean Carroll sexual assault cases. They don't do that. RFK Jr. comes up with a crazy idea about First Amendment rights of doctors to tell you to go drink Drano or whatever it is in order to cure your problems and be protected from losing their license. They don't agree with that. There's a case coming out of Hawaii State Court against big oil and big petroleum that's in the back pocket of Donald Trump or vice versa. And that we were like, oh, here we go. Environmental case. They hate environmental regulation, something that big patrons of Donald Trump gave hundreds of millions of dollars. Here we go. And they ruled that Hawaii can sue under consumer protection law and false advertising law big oil and big petroleum because their products killed people and also, sullied the environment, and they try to cover it up with advertising, and they supported that. So and big oil's livid about it. So there's a number of things. I'm not so sure he's got Amy Coney Barrett as a reliable vote on things that don't have to do with criminal immunity for the president.
But is it strategic, though? So to me, it feels like, as a layperson, that the Supreme Court, or certainly the conservatives or the MAGA Republicans on the Supreme Court, have a little pact going. And this is just in my imagination. Tell me if you think there's any truth to it.
Well.
And they're like, we'll give them that, and then they won't notice this. We'll give them that, and then the public opinion and the media will leave us alone for a little bit so that we can do this. Do you think there's a little bit of that goes on?
Yeah, I do. I think there's a little bit of make up, cover for other things coming down the pike. And we've seen that. Of course, we've seen that. I think there are things that matter to Amy Coney Barrett and to the others. They've already dismantled the separation of church and state.
I was going to say, a lot of the stuff is going to be steeped in Christian nationalism.
Yeah, and they did it already. Like, they already destroyed separation of church and state. They did that already. They took away a woman. You can't take it away again. They took away a woman's right to choose. They dismantled church and state. These are the things that matter to Amy Coney Barrett and the others.
Yes.
They gave immunity to the president and created the Leviathan, or the unitary executive branch. See, this is where the big divide is. The Democrats and moderates and progressives, the president and the Department of Justice and the Judicial and the FBI should be independent from each other. There shouldn't be a weekly meeting with the president to go over Pam Bondi's case list.
I was going to say that's all about to change.
And the FBI's list of targets. There hadn't been at all since Nixon anything like that. There shouldn't be phone calls between the FBI director. Okay, that's what the Democrats believe. But the Republicans believe, as part of their ethos, a federalism ethos, that the chief prosecutor of the United States is not the head of the Department of Justice, not the Attorney General, but the president. That the president, who heads that branch, not only should the Attorney General and the FBI not be separate, it's deleterious to the position of the president. It has to be unified. There's one occupant of the executive branch as opposed to Congress and judiciary. And that person's named the president. And everybody reports to him. There's going to be regular meetings with Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, regular meetings with Kash Patel. And at the rate they were able to get, if they could get Pete Hegseth out
of they probably will.
Oh, they already got him out of committee, 51-49.
Yeah.
So now that he's out of committee, it's a done deal. With sexual assault allegations and affidavits against him, with Jack Reed fighting hard to kill it in committee, with Joni Ernst, who should have been against the Hegseth nomination for Pentagon. If they got him through, they're going to get Kash Patel through. They're going to get them all through.
Undoubtedly. Trump said in the NBC's Meet the Press interview, the only kind of mainstream interview that he's given, that he said, "I'm the chief law enforcer."
Right, that's my point.
And so clearly that diktat from the Republicans and their interpretation of the executive branch has been, because he's been told this, right? He doesn't know anything. So
you're the chief legal officer.
You are the chief law enforcement officer.
Right. And that's the point. So for them, it is anathema to their position of a what's called the unitary executive branch, which is a highfalutin way of saying all power in the executive branch rests with the president of the United States and not any subdepartment. Some people, from back to global AF for a minute, some people, if you just ask them on the street, hey, especially international, people visiting here, where do you think the three branches of our government are: executive, legislative, and judicial? Okay. Where do you think the Department of Justice sits? I would bet you half the people, especially if they're not from this country, would say the judiciary. It would be on the legal side.
Right.
Not in the, to your point, not in the political side.
Yeah.
No. So it starts there. The whole thing that you mentioned at the top of the show starts there.
Optics is really how a lot of this plays out. And Trump knows that he can by nature of being a performer, acting the role of this dictator, that he can control the narrative and convince people that he's doing the right thing, he's on the right side of history, he's on the right side of the law, and he's very good at that. He is a master propagandist. I hate giving him any credit whatsoever, but that is literally the only thing he's good at, is the propaganda.
Yeah.
I want to talk, we have to take a break, but I want to talk more about, now that we've established that the judiciary is pretty much in the tank for Donald Trump, I want to talk more about what you were saying about this coalition and how a lot of these executive orders are being protected or certainly fought in the courts. We'll do that next here on The Weekend Show. If you're looking to take charge of your life with full mental clarity this new year, enhance your sober January and embrace CBD Awareness Month with VIA to experience the powerful benefits of hemp without the high. Trusted by over 500,000 happy customers, VIA is the Swiss Army knife of wellness, dedicated to harnessing the natural benefits of hemp to create high-quality wellness products. VIA's collection of THC products combines minor cannabinoids like CBD, CBG, and CBN with botanical supplements for targeted effects you can actually feel. Whether you're looking to improve your sleep, focus, or relief, VIA has something for you. VIA is also renowned for their award-winning THC and THC-free gummies and vapes, THC-A flower soothing topicals, and calming drops, all crafted with the highest quality hemp sourced from trusted, independently owned American farms. And the best part, VIA legally ships to nearly all states in the US in discreet packaging directly to your door with a worry-free guarantee. No medical card is required. If you're 21 plus, check out the link to VIA in our description and use the code WEEKEND to receive 15% off. And if you're new to VIA, get a free gift of your choice. After you purchase, they ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. This year, enhance your everyday with VIA. So, it's a new year, 2025, and you're thinking, how am I going to make this year different? Am I going to build something for myself? I'm dying to be my own boss, or see if I can turn this business idea I've been kicking around into a reality. But I just don't know how to make it happen. Shopify is how you're going to make it happen, and let me tell you how. The best time to start your new business is right now, and Shopify makes it simple to create your brand, open for business, and get your first sale. Get your store up and running easily with thousands of customizable templates, no coding or design skills required. All you need to do is drag and drop. Their powerful social media tools let you connect all of your channels and create shoppable posts to help you sell everywhere that people scroll. Shopify makes it easy to manage your growing business. They help with the details like shipping, taxes, and payments from one single dashboard, allowing you to focus on the important stuff like growing your business. With Shopify, your first sale is closer than you think. Established in 2025 has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/weekend, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/weekend to start selling with Shopify today. That's shopify.com/weekend. We're back on The Weekend Show with Sir Michael Popok. I'm Anthony Davis.
Thank you for the knighthood, the knighting.
On this show, everybody gets
okay, all right, yeah. All right. I feel better.
Not only did Donald Trump sign these executive orders, but most shockingly, he actually cancelled out a whopping 78 executive orders that were signed by former President Joe Biden's administration. And the most of these orders, according to the White House, attack DEI, climate change, green energy, COVID-19 assistance. I mean, he said that he is going to ban, he calls them windmills, which drives me crazy because the people in the Netherlands must be really offended by that. These are wind turbines.
Yeah.
I think 10% of our energy pretty much across the United States now is green energy, free, green, clean energy. All going to go. No new solar farms. He hates solar farms. He was lying about where the solar panels come from. And so this is a problem because as we speak, California is still burning. The climate crisis is at tipping point, and yet we have an administration that doesn't believe in climate change, wants to drill, baby, drill. We need more than ever because it seems that there is a power vacuum. Hopefully you don't argue with this, but there's a power vacuum in Democratic leadership right now.
I think we're filling it.
we are filling it, right? You and I in this moment, and independent media is filling it. But we need to fall back on something, and it does seem that this coalition of left-leaning and progressive litigation is going to protect us. Is it going to save us, though, from this warming planet and wildfires and this freak weather, do you think?
Yeah, that's a good question. There are federal courts in the right places, manned by the right judges, who are going to be the heroes of the next 4 years. And the good news is it looks like they're up for the task. Let me just start with the 5 judges who have joined together in D.C. to oppose Donald Trump's pardons and commutation of sentences. Amy Berman Jackson, Beryl Howell, Judge Catelli, Judge Mehta, Judge Chutkin have all done their part already to enshrine in their orders, to chastise the president over and over again, not to stain-wash or whitewash what happened on January 6th. So you got that going on. You've got the clergy, which we've already seen, who are starting to stand up the way I wanted them to, a la the civil rights movement, where in churches and synagogues and mosques and temples on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, pick your day, the clergy are leaders and progressive leaders. So we're starting to see that. We're starting to see international leaders, not just the right-wing party in Denmark telling Donald Trump to go F off on the floor of the European Parliament, but others who are opposing. Claudia Sheinbaum in Mexico, the waning moments of the Trudeau administration in Canada, and another in telling them to F off in Germany and in England and in UK. What I'm seeing is a growing, robust opposition to Donald Trump, understanding that we hate any more time on Donald Trump's clock, but it's only 4 years. He's not going to get another term. And so the quicker we make him lame duck, the better. Now, here's where the federal courts in the right places and the attorneys general and these other groups come in handy. Let me give an historical context reference. In the first Trump administration, 1,000 lawsuits or more were filed by attorneys general and groups like the ACLU. The ACLU alone filed over 400 lawsuits against the Trump administration. Their success rate were Hall of Fame numbers. If you took the total of all those cases, they won 80% of the time, 80. Now, sure, things have changed in the 8 or 9 years that have existed. that have passed, including new federal judges that are Trumpers. But I like our chances. And so now, just to give our audience a little bit of a scorecard for home, there are 18 states where the entire state is under the control of Democrats, both chambers of their legislature and the governor, and therefore the attorney general, usually the attorney general. There's another few states where the attorney general is a Democrat and has there's enough support there. That's why we just saw 22 states band together in a day, and file within 24 hours. Now, some people might be asking, they worked late. No, they've been drafting these complaints and these lawsuits for the last 2 years.
They knew what was coming.
They knew what was coming. They also knew that Biden posed a certain risk as a candidate and may not make it. Whether we said it publicly or not, there were people that had to say it was a 50-50 shot that Biden would either make it or get elected. And so they were prepared, these attorneys general in California and Washington and New York, Letitia James and the ones that they were prepared. I read, first place I went on the day of the election was to the ACLU website, which I recommend to everybody, and downloaded about 15 of their white papers about how they were going to oppose Project 2025 through executive order in lawsuits that they were going to file. And I did a bunch of hot takes right in the very beginning to kind of get my voice back about how and that was just ACLU. So now we're starting, if it was 1,000 cases in the first administration, it's going to be 4,000 cases in this administration. Because Donald Trump's takeaway from the immunity decision that we talked about and his non-mandate is he's like drunk with power. Talk about overreaching and the pendulum swinging. This is where we crush them at the midterms. While the federal courts do their part to block environmental protection law that's not consistent with the EPA's mandate, administrative law, or what Congress has to say. I tell you this, I don't care who's on the Supreme Court. They don't like executive orders that try to do big things in violation of what Congress is supposed to be doing or in violation of the Constitution. And so every time I hear of an executive order, and I'm making my way through them now, that is another opportunity to get a moderate judge to make the proper ruling to go. And we're going to have to do what they did. This may be a fire hose pressurization of the Supreme Court, where we just send hundreds of cases and attempt to get them to the United States Supreme Court one way or the other and force them to make these decisions. It's like shots on goal in a hockey game. We're just going to have to shoot. Something is going to get through. And so that's where we're going to see the Amy Coney Barretts and the John Roberts trying to refurbish their reputations and maybe pushing it back against the worst extremes of Donald Trump. But more importantly, most of what he's done so far violates law in the books of Congress, violates the Administrative Procedures Act, is outside the boundaries of what a president can do by
and
executive
international
order.
law as well.
And yes. I mean,
look at the World Health Organization pulling out of that. I mean, that has literally set fire to the rest of the world for fear, because the US funds most of the World Health Organization by nature of its scale, its economy, and its size.
Oh, we are, not to back to the other, we are less secure as a nation because of Donald Trump, because of many, many reasons. One, there's no incentive for our allies to join together in intelligence gathering. Who are you going to turn the intelligence over to? Tulsi Gabbard? Donald Trump? So the Five Eyes and all those organizations that help us with intelligence gathering, they don't want to do that.
All on ice.
All on ice. They don't want to cooperate. That's one. He's undermining NATO left and right. Yeah. He's declared to the world that he's not going to stand up for freedom and sovereignty, especially even with our friends. He's attacking our allies with the destabilizing tariff war and therefore the world economy. He's emboldening our adversaries to use him to attract new fill in the blank terrorists, support in their own countries. Yeah. We're not making any new democracies under Donald Trump because he's sullied the brand of democracy. So, I have friends of mine that would, say to me over a drink, "Oh, I think, I love having Trump back in office for foreign policy." Why? Because he's so unpredictable that keeps people back on their toes. I said, "No, this isn't Lethal Weapon. This is
real life.
This is real life. That's not what happens. That just shows you that they're going to exploit him, the terrorists, the Putins of the world, the North Koreans of the world. They know they have him. They know how to play him like a fiddle. And then he puts in people that are obscenely unqualified for their positions, for the Pentagon. I mean, Putin must be laughing his ass off at who Donald Trump has chosen for intelligence and defense. Seriously, it's like they were handpicked by Putin.
I mean, who's even running the military right now? I mean, this is
acting whoever.
Right. I mean, this is my concern is that, as you say, we are weaker than we've ever been. Let's just talk, though, to the people who are loving all of this. I'm talking about the Trump supporters and the voters who have a much more simplistic view, a little like Trump's view of the world, where everything's black and white, and it's like, this is strength, this is power, America is back. I mean, bear in mind, on the White House website, the Constitution's been taken down. Anything about DEI or equality has been removed from the website. It's blank. There's basically a promotional video now of Trump as a strongman with music and guns and space lasers and everything. I mean, that is what he wants. And yet there are people that are like, yeah, USA. Well, what do we say to those people?
I still think there's a fair amount of MAGA and people that supported him that are having voter remorse. We commented on it a lot on the Midas Touch Network. Whole groups of people that were like, wait a minute, Greenland? Yeah. Wait a minute, H-1B? Yeah. Wait, giving a pardon to the guy that ran a drug trade on the internet?
Yeah.
Pardoning
Rhodes and
pardoning the Jan Sixers, the Oath Keepers, and the ones that attack law enforcement. The Fraternal Order of Police came out with like, you have just pissed all over just stolen our valor with this decision. So if you reran the election today after week one, I'm not so sure he pulls it out. However, We just have to fix, it's not so much we have to fix the brand. The New York Times is running all these crazy stories like, oh, the Democrats are in disarray and leadership is, I don't read the election that way. It was not, for me, the magnification of the United States. I know the map looked like that. Oh, it's all redder than it was before. It wasn't that. It was for me, we could all list our 5 reasons why the Democrats lost, and I think we'd have a lot of overlap. But for me, one reason was we like process, and we like primaries, and we like rallying around our candidate. And we were denied that as a Democrat, as a party. Instead, we were given this take it or leave it, 2 months, this is the replacement, and we're going to spend $1 billion of wallpaper around it, so you don't notice that she didn't go through a primary process. She wasn't vetted. She didn't come out stronger. And primaries, I know that in UK where you have like 30-day elections or campaigns or whatever it is.
18 days in some
18
cases.
days, yeah. Right. You don't understand our 2 years of campaigning.
No.
But we're used to it. And we expect that the person is going to go through that crucible and come out a stronger candidate. And we're going to get behind them, seeing them debate, seeing them on the stage, seeing them in press conferences. And that's just the American way. And when
it's show business, that's what it is.
Yeah. And it got taken away from us.
Yeah.
And she was done a disservice, because if he had left earlier and we had a little mini primary, even if it was 3 or 4 months, and she survived the gauntlet of Gavin Newsom and Gretchen Whitmer and J.B. Pritzker and Pete Buttigieg and North Carolina's Roy Cooper. And if she survived that, oh my God, she would be almost unbeatable. And the American people would be behind her. I don't have a problem
with the lack of primary, because she was pretty much uncontested. And there was a great positive feeling towards her. I think people were just thrilled that Biden had come to this decision. But 107
there would have been
days,
you don't think there would have been a primary if that nobody would have challenged her?
I don't think that is the reason she didn't win the election. I think that is far right propaganda. That it was Republicans saying that she was unelected. That was Republicans saying.
I'm not saying she's unelected. I'm taking it for the voters. I don't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, elected from a perspective of being elected as a candidate. And
that didn't sit well with the American people, at least the Democrats.
Right, but my point is that wasn't coming from the voices of Democrats. It was coming from the voices of Republicans.
Except, how do you explain 9 million Democrats who voted for Biden sitting home for Kamala Harris because they weren't energized to vote for her, which happens over a primary or a candidate that survived a primary process?
Yeah.
See,
but was there time for a primary?
No, there wasn't under Biden waiting so long.
Right. So there's that.
It started with Biden.
And she was an incumbent, and the Democrats did not have Elon Musk on side. And maybe this is a good segue into the fact that this election, as far as I read it, because a lot of people are like, it was rigged. Yeah, it was, from a disinformation perspective. Mm-hmm. It was rigged, not from a voting machine's perspective, but from a disinformation perspective, that this election, more than any in history, with him spending $270 million campaigning in swing states, paying $1 million a time to get people to change their vote and incentivize people. I mean, the fact that any of that was allowed, I mean, he was taken to court over that, and they allowed him to continue running his lottery.
Yeah,
that to me is what the Democrats did not have, and even Mark Cuban doesn't have Elon Musk's money.
Yeah, and I mean Elon Musk, look, he spent, well, what a return on investment. He spent $200 million to make $200 billion. He went from $457 billion at the time that he decided to buy a president. And now he's up to over $600 billion.
Don't forget the $44 billion on Twitter, which at the time people were like, what's this for? And now we realize was to swing an election. Yeah, 1,000%.
So, and I'm not sure we ever will have not only the money. I mean, the ones that used to be Democrats were all sitting in the front row of the inauguration. Zuckerberg,
I know,
Bezos, Tim Cook, they're all, they did not vote for Trump. Maybe they did.
Yeah. Well, that was a bitter pill to swallow for a lot of people. But I feel like, we've discovered, haven't we, that in America, it's like follow the money. Follow the money and your answer will come.
1,000%. And I agree 1,000%. That the oligarchs and the big Fortune 50 companies got pilloried the first time around by Donald Trump, losing shareholder value in their view. When they stood up against his travel ban, when they stood up against his anti-transgender things, and they weren't going to let it happen again. There's too much money at risk, too much money at stake. They all have government contracts. And there you have it.
You mentioned the travel ban. The Muslim ban is back. That's already a thing. But I just want to quote a little line that I read on the first or second page of this Muslim ban or order. It basically also said, because this is very much an expanded Muslim ban, it goes far beyond what he did last time. And I quote, "And the United States must ensure that admitted aliens and aliens otherwise already present in the United States do not bear hostile attitudes towards its citizens, culture, government, institutions, or founding principles." As a lawyer, how do you read that?
I don't think anybody should be traveling to the United States anytime soon. I don't know how
it talks about people who are already here.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to go door to door, trying. This is again. You've got a couple of executive orders, right? You got this new one that just came out that says I'm going to be allowing to deputize local law enforcement to be federal marshals because of an imminent influx at the southern border. First of all, there is no imminent influx at the southern border. This is again how these executive orders are going to get challenged in the court. Every month of the last year of the Biden administration, the numbers at the southern border went down, not up, and they're not going up now with Claudia Sheinbaum in office. So that's a charade. And then they're going to turn ICE and these immigration officers into some sort of truth police to determine how are you going to do that? I mean, you can look at everybody's social media. Maybe they look there, do a detailed interview. We went from a country that is built on immigration and immigration foundations where we've been, and this is what happens when you spend 50, 75 years not having a dignified immigration policy in this country. I've called for a new Ellis Island project. My grandparents, my grandfathers came through. We shorthanded as Ellis Island, but it was a naturalization center. When they came out when they came off the boat and got processed, when they walked out the door, they were, to use the current parlance, documented. I don't know, it was green card then or on the way to citizenship, whatever. We need that again. Take the detention centers and make them into immigration processing centers, because our very future not only depends on AI and building data centers, it also depends on human capital and people coming to this country and wanting to be in this country and wanting to be productive in this country, right? And not have to, I still point to the Emma Lazarus poem at the base of the Statue of Liberty, which I used to pass every day on the way to work, the statue itself. Give us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Where is that America? This America first, I really feel like I'm in, Philip Roth's Plot Against America, and we're in an alternate universe.
But it's a scam, though, isn't
Charles Lindbergh won the presidency.
Right. But the difference is that it's a scam. There is no crisis at the southern border that warrants this level of policing.
Or the use of the military on domestic
use of the military, I was about to say. Yeah. So that's part of the problem. This is steeped in racism and xenophobia and white supremacy. And the media, the corporate media, have failed to mention any of those three as an example.
How about when Stephen Miller said at the Madison Square Garden that America is for Americans
only.
Only.
America is for Americans and Americans only, to quote. Yeah, it stuck with me.
Yeah. Yeah, because I don't know, I know you came here, but my grandfathers came here when they were 7 and 8 years old on boats. One of them pushed a cart, on the Lower East Side when he was 8 years old. He graduated from the 6th grade. And then, yes, it's a Horatio Alger story. By the time he was 50, he owned one of the greatest factories in America, and he retired. But,
that's the American dream, right?
Right. He had the American, because he didn't have to look over. There was no bigger patriot than my grandfather, because he didn't have to look over his shoulder because he was a proud American and America accepted him and integrated him into society. My other grandfather, who came from the same region in Russia and settled in New Jersey, my great grandfather founded a soda and beer distributor in Asbury Park, New Jersey in 1906, brought the family over after that. That grandfather was so proud to have children that served in World War II wearing the American uniform. That's different. And my wife, who came here on a green card lottery, literally, I think she won the green card lottery before I met her. You don't find any more proud American than my wife. We need to make people proud in a dignified immigration policy, not round them up in midnight raids at Walmart or at meatpacking plants.
But the Episcopal bishop was right when she said that immigrants aren't criminals. And this is the propaganda that Trump has sown, that all immigrants are rapists and drug dealers and they're coming for you. And you can't even go out and buy bread, he said, because you may die because of these people.
Look, the vast majority of crime committed in America is by American citizens. Good old fashioned and mostly American citizens.
Yeah.
By comparison, a very small percentage of immigrants / undocumented commit crime because they're not here to commit crime. They're here for a better life for their children and their families.
And they don't want to lose their status.
And they don't want,
for all of us, none of us, we want to pay our tax. We don't even want to get a DUI or a speeding ticket.
And by the way, the undocumented paid $65 billion in taxes last year.
And none of that gets mentioned. So we know that. It's about, I guess, communicating that to the society at large to recognize that everything that comes out of Trump's mouth on the subject of immigration, and Tom Homan as well, the architect of the family separation policy, who's back in town, is propaganda not based in truth.
Yeah, I posted on one of my social media feeds. Every time I see Karen Levette, now the press secretary, am I allowed just to use an artist rendering of that North Korean pink news lady with the Korean flag in the back? Yeah. Because this is propaganda that would make North Korea blush. She said after you listed all the executive orders and memos, she got up to a podium and actually had the temerity to tell the American people that Donald Trump accomplished more in his first day in office than Joe Biden did in 4 years. She's going to be shocked when she goes to the Biden Presidential Library.
How is, just finally on this subject, how is what we are discussing any different to Germany in 1939?
Yeah, I hate, you always hate making that comparison unless you really have to.
Well, yeah, we all hate making that comparison. Yeah, but I'm deadly serious.
But Goebbels would love doing what Elon Musk is doing, which is tearing down all of the websites and all of the information and revising and rewriting it, generating propaganda, taking over the Voice of America, having, as you say, be propaganda videos for Donald Trump. I mean, this is Orwellian. This is what I'm waiting for. 24 hours of some sort of orchestral music to be played on the radio, because that's the signal I got to leave at that moment, because Lord knows what's going to happen next. And we have to stand up to it here with our audience, which we do, because, it reminds me of the Handmaid's Tale. Remember how that's people, it's on episode season 6 now, whatever, but from the book's perspective, it started very slowly, right? The woman who went to the ATM and, that's weird. I can't get any money out today. Right. And then she goes to work and they fire her, and then they only will title things in the name of the husband. And then suddenly she is a second-class citizen and almost a slave to the state. We have to call this out and use what's happening now in front of us to punish and throw the bastards out come the midterm elections. And if we can't use what Donald Trump is doing now in his fascist ways, his propaganda ways, to defeat as a party, to defeat him at the midterms and beyond, then we should go out of business as a party. Right? This should be relatively easy, but we need to hold Donald Trump accountable for every pardon he does, for every law enforcement officer he gives the middle finger to, and remind them, because it's amazing how short the attention span is as of Americans. Most people don't even remember the first administration. I do.
Well, stuff back then that seemed radical by nature of what's gone since seems like a walk in the park.
Yeah.
And we've normalized a lot of what he does. And I think that's one way of coping, maybe. We have to take another quick break, but I want to come back and talk about civil rights and how the Department of Justice has ordered its Civil Rights Division to halt the majority of its function. We'll do that next here on The Weekend Show. Are you ready to jumpstart your health in 2025? Well, Lumen can help. Did you know that 80% of resolutions fail by February? You can beat the odds with Lumen and improve your health. I found a valuable tool that gives me insights to create a healthy metabolism for my body, and it's managed to improve other aspects of my life as well. It's called Lumen. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath, and on the app it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs and gives you a tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workouts, sleep, and even stress management. All you have to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll know exactly what's going on with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs. Then Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day, based on your measurements. You can also breathe into it before and after workouts and meals, so you know exactly what's going on in your body in real time. And Lumen will give you tips to keep on top of your health game. Your metabolism is your body's engine. It's how your body turns the food you eat into fuel that keeps you going. And because your metabolism is at the center of everything your body does, optimal metabolic health translates to a bunch of benefits, including easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness results, and better sleep. Take the next step to improving your health. Go to lumen.me/weekend to get 20% off your Lumen. That is lumen.me/weekend for 20% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. We're back on The Weekend Show with Michael Popok. The U.S. Department of Justice ordered its Civil Rights Division to halt a majority of its functions, including a freeze on pursuing new cases, indictments, or settlements, according to some reporting that's just come out via the Washington Post, I think. The DOJ's Civil Rights Division is primarily tasked with enforcing laws prohibiting discrimination, from disability rights to housing, immigrant civil rights. But it's also the branch of the DOJ tasked with enforcing voting and election law. This is something that Trump talks about a lot, right? Oh, we're going to make voting safe and all of this kind of stuff. But at the same time, he doesn't believe that anybody who doesn't look like him, white, male, straight and wealthy, deserves a fair chance at a job or anything, really, it seems. Civil rights, we think of the civil rights movement, but it didn't stop with Martin Luther King Jr., did it? I mean, this is still a massive part of the American system, and yet Trump wants it shut down.
From what I told people during the campaign is to worry about things like the Civil Rights Division, because that touches your life more than probably anything else.
Yeah.
When you hear about corrupt police departments being broken up and being investigated or having monitoring placed over them, that's because of the work of the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. As you said, when you see barriers to entry in voting or things related to maps and racist maps being used for congressional districts and other voting, that's the Civil Rights Division. When you see things that just, let's be frank, you see things that just happen on the streets of New York, like the shooting of the United Healthcare executive.
Yeah.
Once it turns into a Department of Justice issue, that could well be a civil rights / terrorism type case. Now, I already knew that we would kiss the Civil Rights Division goodbye when he nominated Harmeet Dillon out of California, who I know, who I've litigated with and against. She was against us in the Midas Touch versus Marjorie Taylor Greene case that I handled. And I actually co-counseled with her on a case where she actually was on the right side of people and joined me in a class action case that I was working on. But Harmeet is no friend of civil rights, I'll be fair. She is federalist. She is right wing. She ran unsuccessfully to be the chairperson of the Republican National Committee. She lost, and as a consolation prize, she got the head of the Civil Rights Division. She's been pining away to be the Attorney General of the state of California, which will likely not happen because of her politics, or of the United States if Trump got in, forever. She's an opportunist. Listen, she's got a nice little law firm that constantly opposed the Biden COVID policies, made a lot of money doing it. She's one of the 3 or 4 lawyers of choice for everybody in MAGA world during the Jan 6th issues. Her firm represents dozens and dozens and dozens of people that have been indicted or investigated by state's attorney general or the federal Department of Justice. So for her to be chosen to be the civil rights, that meant the death of the Civil Rights Division, whether they put a hold on it until she got there or not. It's really the person that's going to dictate it. What the executive order putting a hold on it means, it only reinforces what I've been saying, which is you are not if you wanted a president that was going to stand up for your values and stand up for civil rights for people that are trying to get abortions or exercise reproductive rights and not have to go through violent marchers and people blocking the doors. If you wanted to have law enforcement be held accountable for police brutality in the streets, if you wanted to make sure your voting rights were protected, if you wanted to make sure that your rights to federal programs was not being interfered with by others, then you needed to vote for the other party. Because by voting for this party, and this is what happened the last time around, all of these cases got dismissed. All of these, and it became an absolutely do-nothing department. Whereas under Merrick Garland and Joe Biden, it was vibrant, it was active, it was important, and it was changing people's lives in ways that we couldn't put it on a bumper sticker so people didn't know how to vote for it. Look, Joe Biden did a terrible job selling his economic and foreign policy accomplishments. How is he going to sell vote for me because you'll appreciate my civil rights division? I mean, that's just not something that's easy.
But that was part of why some people say that Kamala Harris was not successful, is because the Democrats' platform was too holistic, and it was all about protecting minority groups and trans people, which it wasn't actually, but that's how it had been presented by the Republicans.
Yeah, I mean, what was the final shiv in Kamala Harris's side was that series of ads at the end where they said that she's for them. Yeah. And then it was the pronoun issue. And then it had the picture of the guy that used to be in the federal government who's bald with lipstick. Yeah. She's for them and he's for us. That was that was right up there with Willie Horton. That was
what chance did Democrats stand with that kind of propaganda? This is what's so sad. And now we're seeing companies like Target, for example, are dropping their DEI policies completely, and they'll save an awful lot of money in that regard. Some companies like Costco, I think, have stood up to this, and they're saying we're sticking with our DEIA policies because we believe in inclusivity and diversity. But, an awful lot of Americans simply don't understand what you call affirmative action, we call positive discrimination, the importance of it, and don't seem to understand the history of how the white man has reigned supreme in America, and everybody else needs a look into.
Yeah, I mean, look, I said this maybe 5 years ago. If you look at the demographics over the next 10 to 15 years, it's going to be the browning of America, right? 1 in 4 will be of Hispanic descent. That used to mean that's good for the Democrats, but we have to realign our brand with these groups. We have taken for granted the black vote and the brown vote, the Hispanic vote in this country, and we've allowed Trump and MAGA to chip away at it, and not to the point where they're a majority, but just the fact that they got like any percent of the black vote, given it's completely against their interest, or the Hispanic vote is beyond me. But you'll see the numbers. So we've got to figure out what our coalition is to prevail and sell from now until the midterms and beyond what that is. Therefore, we need leaders to step forward in opposition, right? We're not in exile. We're just in opposition. We need leaders to step forward, whether it's Gavin Newsom and Gretchen Whitmer and Pete Buttigieg, and maybe it's Kamala making a return. We'll have to see what she's going to have to define her own future here. And, she's welcome, but she has to step forward and be a leader. We need some leaders out there to do the counterpoint and counterpunching over the next 4 years. What we can't do is be distracted on purpose. Donald Trump, as Ben Meiselas on our network says, he's implementing the weapons of mass distraction. Yeah. He does all these crazy things, and then the mass media runs towards it, and then he's won the news cycle for the day, and it ignores the fact that the average American is not being helped, that his policies are unconstitutional or are going to cost billions and billions of dollars, like tax cuts for the wealthy. Saturday Night Live did a great, I don't know if you saw the opener for Saturday Night Live last week when they did the Rachel Maddow show. And they said, and the topic on the panel was, we can't be distracted by every little, we have to focus on, it was almost what we've been saying on the Midas Touch Network. Yeah. And then as they were doing it, there was like that swishy sound where this just in, Donald Trump wants to trade Connecticut for Italy. Right. And then, then we go off and running about this ridiculousness. So we have to be rigorous, disciplined in our opposition. I think it starts with shows like yours, audiences like yours, the Midas Touch Network, mine, Legal AF, where we link arms, get the truth, get the information. But then we got to do one more thing. It's not just enough to sit and listen to the truth or our analysis or commentary. It's putting it into action. I can't tell you how many emails and DMs I've gotten positive about people who are going to change their life off of the last election and want to find ways to help the disadvantaged, the underprivileged, the Democrats, the progressives. And they're starting to do it. They're running for office. They're running for their school board. They're becoming poll watchers, whatever they're going to do, because there's a need for that. I did something. You and I talked about it offline. After the election, with the birth of my daughter, I made a major decision for our family, where I'm going to be full-time with the Midas Touch Network and on Legal AF. I've got another big project I'm not ready to announce on your show. You're not going to get, but I am going to announce a big project, which is going to be pro-justice, that I think our audience is going to say, I hope they're going to say thank you and be very supportive of it. And so that's how I decided to make a change in my life, the trajectory of my life off of what just happened. Because we can't just act like nothing just happened. Like I said, I'm a week in. And I'm not exhausted. I'm actually strangely exhilarated because it's exactly what I thought he would have to do. He'd have to operate by executive order. These executive orders were going to be unconstitutional, most of them, and or be in violation of congressional law. And now we're at the Supreme Court. And then we're going to see who's right. Not that you're right or I'm right or wrong, but how the Supreme Court handles civil issues, not criminal immunity issues, not ballot issues, but about Donald Trump's core fundamental policies. You can see he's already not bashing them. Even after they ruled against him on the sentencing, he said it was a fine decision.
Well, he doesn't shout back at anybody who stands up to him. We saw this with Mexico and Claudia Sheinbaum. Left her alone. He went out for Justin Trudeau, calling him Governor Trudeau and all that stuff. Yeah. But he left her alone.
Sheinbaum she took a page properly. I'm sure she has very good people around her. She's super smart. She took a page out of Nancy Pelosi. Yeah. Nancy Pelosi was the only politician in the Democratic Party or any party that Donald Trump did not give a little cute nickname to and didn't demean, because she ate his lunch. Those meetings with him and everything else. He had a respect for her. Because she stood up for him, because she was the Iron Maiden. Right. And Sheinbaum is taking a page out of Nancy Pelosi's book for sure.
So it's about not giving him oxygen, which is what the narcissist, anyone who's been in a narcissistic relationship will know, that if you give the narcissist the oxygen, they're going to suck up all of that stuff that's in the room. Yeah. We should probably just finish by mentioning that you and I are coming together to launch a new show. We've alluded to it a few times in this program, called Global AF, where you lend your legal expertise and I bring my experience living and traveling around Europe and the rest of the world to talk about the effect of Donald Trump on the rest of the planet, not just from a climate perspective, but certainly from a international relations.
And their response to him, which is very important.
Well, the Brits, interestingly, just took a phone call from Donald Trump. This was reported on Friday in the Independent newspaper, saying that they were left laughing after the phone call with Donald Trump because he was so ridiculous with the things that he was calling for. And, this is a very good way to react to Trump, to laugh him off the stage or off the TV or off the podium. And no one's really done that yet. So that's an interesting line of inquiry.
And we didn't really see it in the first term. I mean, people are better prepared for the outrageous, outlandish, depraved activity of Donald Trump. We know him. He's been branded a felon. Especially people around the world. And I think they are trying to figure out, they've got their equilibrium. They're starting to get their feet underneath them now. Like we said, we saw the clergy is starting to step forward. We never saw this acting out and responding and counterpunching Donald Trump in the first term, not the way we're seeing it now. And I think that is going to help minimize the damage of the Trump administration and make him as quickly a lame duck president as possible. Let's be frank. He's looking at the midterm election in less than 2 years. And if we can grab back one or two of the chambers, then he's done. Then he'll just be doing social media posts for the last 2 years because he has such a slim lead in the House. And if we can grab the House, or maybe both as a punishment as they run the bums out, run them off on a rail, then he'll just be left, being completely Mr. Irrelevant. That's what we have to aim for.
Yeah.
So for people who are like, I can't live with 4 years of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Okay, shorten his stay, crush him at the midterms.
He doesn't have the mandate he claims to have.
No.
And I think that can be proven. I agree with you. Okay, listen, we have to finish, but I'm thrilled that we've had this chance to spend some time together. Again, we're going to do it a lot more regularly in the coming weeks. And for now, my thanks to you, Michael Popok.
You too. Thank you.
I'm Anthony Davis. Don't forget to support me and independent journalism at patreon.com/5Minute News or by joining the 5 Minute News YouTube channel. And I'll come back next Sunday with a brand new special guest and more factual news to discuss on the 5 Minute News Weekend Show with Midas Touch.